The moon was shining low, casting an eerie glow over the Shire River. The water, black as ink, twisted and rippled under the night sky, reflecting distorted images of the reeds that lined the banks. Gringo and I were floating silently in our boat, moving with the current, scanning the shore with wary eyes. The marsh was alive with the sounds of the night, but it wasn't the croaking of frogs or the rustle of reeds that had us on edge. It was the darkness. The kind of darkness that seemed to breathe, to whisper secrets too terrible to be spoken aloud. We'd heard the stories, tales of the river taking men, of eyes watching from beneath the surface, of things that lurked in the water, things that didn't belong in the daylight. Gringo sat at the front of the boat, his eyes sharp, his hands gripping his rifle with the kind of tension that only came from experience. He was a tough man, a wild spirit with an accent that never quite fit in this part of the world. We'd been hunting together for years, and I knew his instincts were razor sharp. But even he looked uneasy tonight. "There," he whispered, pointing to the shallows near a cluster of tall grass. His voice was barely audible over the murmuring water. I followed his gaze, my breath catching in my throat. There, half submerged, barely visible in the murky depths, was the unmistakable silhouette of a crocodile. A beast unlike any I had ever seen. Its massive head rested just above the surface, its glassy eyes reflecting the moonlight, filled with an ancient, malevolent intelligence. Gringo didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle and fired. The shot shattered the night, sending ripples across the water, scattering birds from the trees in a panicked frenzy. The bullet hit true. The croc convulsed, twisting violently, sending up a whirlpool of blood and fury, but it wasn't dead. It rolled, snapping and churning the water into a frothy mess. The damn thing was still fighting. Before I could react, Gringo did something I could never have predicted. He leapt from the boat. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, my voice drowned by the chaos. He hit the water with a splash, already moving toward the beast. The croc, wounded but still terrifyingly powerful, lashed out. Its tail struck him hard, sending him tumbling into the shallows. He landed in the reeds, coughing, struggling to regain his footing. Then the croc lunged. It came at him with terrifying speed, its massive jaws snapping shut inches from his face. He barely managed to roll away, grabbing hold of the beast's rough, scarred hide in a desperate attempt to hold it off. It thrashed wildly, pulling him deeper, dragging him toward the abyss. I raised my .375 H&H rifle, trying to steady my shot. My pulse pounded in my ears. One shot, one chance. If I missed, Gringo was dead. The croc rolled again, taking Gringo under. The water went still for a fraction of a second, just long enough for dread to settle in my gut. Then the river erupted. Gringo surfaced, gasping, clawing at the mud, his face twisted in a mask of terror. The croc was still on him, its jaws clamped around his arm, trying to drag him under again. Blood swirled in the water, mingling with the moonlight, painting a nightmare before my eyes. I couldn't wait any longer. I exhaled, lined up the sights, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle roared, the recoil slamming into my shoulder. The bullet struck true, hitting the croc just behind the eye. For a split second, it froze. Then, with a sickening shudder, the beast went limp, its massive body drifting away with the current. Gringo staggered back, coughing, spitting out river water, blood dripping from the gash on his arm. He stood there for a moment, chest heaving, his hands trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. "You're insane, Gringo," I breathed, lowering my rifle, the realization of what had just happened sinking in. Somebody had to get close. He let out a ragged, throaty laugh. "Somebody had to get close," he said, wiping the mud from his face with his good arm. We pulled the beast up onto the bank, and as we stood over it, I felt the weight of its monstrous size sink in. It was over 12 feet long, ancient, scarred from a lifetime of battles, a true terror of the Shire, brought down at last. But as we stared at it, I felt something else, something watching. The darkness around us was alive, shifting, whispering. Then I saw them, eyes, dozens of them, lurking just beyond the reeds, watching us, silent, waiting. The marsh had gone deathly still, the air thick with something unseen, something that sent an icy tremor down my spine. "Gringo," I said, barely above a whisper, my hands tightening on my rifle. "We need to leave. Now." He turned to me, following my gaze. His face went pale. "We need to leave. Now." Without another word, we scrambled back to the boat, dragging ourselves aboard, shoving off with frantic urgency. As we motored away, I stole one last glance at the shore. The eyes were still there. And then, slowly, one by one, they disappeared beneath the water. The darkness felt different now, still eerie, still thick with the unknown, but we had stared into it, danced with it, and somehow survived. As we drifted away, I glanced over at Gringo, soaked, bleeding, grinning despite it all. And I knew this wouldn't be our last encounter with the shadows of the Shire, or with death itself.